Treasure hunter Nate woke up to find himself hanging outside a plane from a line of cargo crates which were also hanging from an open plane. He made his way up as he fought off several mercenaries and managed to get back into the plane, but as soon as he got in, a red car knocked him back out again. As Nate was falling, a hand grabbed just in time, which reminded Nate of a past experience he had when he was just a boy. 15 years earlier, young Nate and his older brother Sam sneaked into a museum in Boston, where Nate was falling off a window when Sam caught him by his hand. The orphan brothers were looking for a map made after the Magellan expedition which was used to find ancient treasures. Unfortunately, as soon as Sam tried to pick the lock, he triggered the alarm and they were caught by the police. The boys were taken back to the orphanage where Nate got to stay, but as that was Sam's third strike, he must be taken to prison. They gave the brothers a moment alone to say goodbye, when Sam took the opportunity to escape. Before escaping, he gave Nate his beloved ring that he had been carrying, and promised to look for him in the future. After Sam fled, Nate found an empty piece of paper and his brother's lighter which he used to reveal a hidden touching message from Sam. Back to the present day, Nate worked as a bartender in New York. He also pickpockets rich customers by getting close to them with random excuses, like helping a lady to light her cigarette in order to steal her bracelet. Nate still carries his brother's lighter with him, even though it isn't working very well these days. One night, when he was closing the bar, a man named Sully approached Nate and praised him on his pickpocketing skills before offering him an important job. Nate didn't wish to be involved in any criminal activity with a stranger and he chased him out, only to then realize Sully took the bracelet from his pocket and replaced with his card instead. Wanting the bracelet back, Nate went to the address on the card, sneaking inside the apartment by stealing the keys from the doorman. Sully had been waiting for him, and to Nate's surprise, he was in possession of the original Magellan's map. Nate then commented on the legends that told the original trip had been planned to find gold, and Sully confirmed that was true. The trip had been funded by the Moncada family, and the current heirs, Armando and his son Santiago, were still looking for that treasure. To convince Nate to join him, Sully mentioned that he was a friend of Sam's, and even showed him a picture of his adult self. Apparently, Sam disappeared after they found Magellan's journal, and Sully didn't hear from him ever since. Nate agreed that sounded like Sam because he hasn't been in contact with him either, so Sully pointed out that looking for the gold could help Nate find Sam as well. Nate still turned him down, claiming that the brother he knew doesn't exist anymore. When Nate returned to his apartment, he opened a box where he kept important items, which included postcards from Sam. Nate lied to Sully when he said his brother didn't contact him. He took the ring Sam gave him and put it on and decided that he wants to do this after all. Sully and Nate met to plan their first move. There is an upcoming auction and one of the antiques they are offering is a cross which is the key for the chamber where the gold were hidden. The legend mentioned there are 2 keys and Sully already found the other one, so they needed to steal this one to get started. After convincing Sully to go 50-50 on the gold, Nate spent some time to study the building where the auction would be held and came up with a plan. The night of the auction, Sully and Nate spotted a striking red car and realized that Santiago is also there, so there is going to be tough competition for the cross as he thinks the gold is his birthright. He wasn't alone though. He has employed mercenary leader Joe, who used to be Sully's partner, who teased him when she saw him. As the auction started, Sully pretended to be one of the buyers while Nate got the plan ready. Joe noticed him moving suspiciously and sent her men to keep an eye on him. By putting his gum on the digital lock, Nate managed to get inside the electrical room. The idea was to cut power so that Sully can steal the cross in the dark. As Nate was taking too long, Sully found himself with no other choice but to start bidding against Santiago, even though he didn't actually have the money for it. Unfortunately, Nate was found by Joe's men and a fight began. After exchanging a few blows, Nate ran out of the room and decided to cause a distraction by jumping on the hall ceiling lamps. Now that everyone was panicking and the cross has been taken away, so Sully turned his jacket around and pretended to be one of the staff. As Nate was found and chased by security, Sully puts his hands on the cross and took it away, saying he was in charge of taking it to the vault, when Joe saw and went after him. She managed to corner him and threatened him with her knife. But at that moment, security found them and tried to arrest her for attacking an auction employee. Sully got away with the cross while Joe fought the guards. When Sully made it back to his car, Nate was already waiting for him, and they agreed to go to Spain together. On the plane, Nate was able to look at the captain's journal, which confirmed the legend. Magellan found tons of gold in the Philippines, hid it in Barcelona, and then told the Moncada family that he found nothing. Following the clues in the journal, they would be able to find the gold, but the only clue was a picture of a tree. Once they arrived in Barcelona, they met up with Chloe, another treasure hunter who had managed to acquire the other cross. However, she did not want to work with Sully, whom she considered to be a liar and a backstabber. After she left, Nate realized that she had stolen their cross and chased her through the streets of Barcelona. Chloe was faster, though, and she made it to her car, ready to escape. Nate and Sully did not give up and convinced her to stay by pointing out that she might have the crosses, but they had the journal, so they were the only ones who knew where to go next. Now that they were all working together, Nate took them to the place indicated by the clue. It was not an actual tree, it referred to a church that had pie as part of the name and a tree as its logo. Meanwhile, Santiago confronted his dad. Armando had appeared on the news saying he would give away his fortune, and he confessed that the reason for this was that their money was dipped in blood. Unable to make him change his mind, Santiago went to see Jo and ordered her to keep an eye on Sully as he had been seen around town. Back to the trio, they were taking a break before moving on to the next part of the plan. While Nate was in the kitchen, Chloe told Sully that she had guessed Nate was Sam's brother and demanded that Sully tell him the truth of what happened. Sully brushed her off saying he would do it when the time was right. The next day, Santiago tried to change his father's mind again about giving away the fortune. Since Armando refused, Santiago followed him to his car and ordered Jo to kill him. Later that night, the team entered the church pretending to be tourists, and Nate was shocked to find that the postcards they sold there matched one of Sam's. As they were following the symbols and words carved on the floor and walls, the trio found a secret button which Nate pressed to reveal a hidden painting behind a Mother Mary statue. When Nate turned it around, they saw a picture of hell at the back and the altar revealed the keyholes for the crosses. Nate and Chloe then inserted the keys respectively and turned them clockwise first, which activated the traps to release a series of darts that almost killed them. Thankfully, they dodged them just in time and tried clockwise next, which finally gave them access to a hidden tunnel. The journal mentioned one must stay up in heaven and the other down in hell, so Nate and Chloe entered the tunnel with one of the crosses while Sully stayed outside with the other. In order for Sully to know where he needed to go next, Nate put a tracker on his phone. Now, Sully could follow their movements, unaware that Jo was following him too. Nate and Chloe followed a mysterious tunnel which eventually led them to a nightclub, and Jo's men were there too. By pretending to be a couple dancing, the duo crossed the room and made it to the bar, where Nate tried to start a fire with Sam's lighter. It failed again, so Chloe started it for him, and now they had the distraction they needed to work on the puzzle carved on the wall behind the bar. Jo's men found them anyway, and Nate tried to buy some time by getting into a fight with them while Chloe was searching for clue. Finally she found another keyhole where she then inserted the cross to reveal another secret tunnel and the duo got in, leaving Jo's men behind. The duo followed the tunnel and arrived at a secret door hidden under a fountain. They used a key to open the door, but as they entered, the room began to fill with water. Sully had to use the cross on the hole above the ground to save them. However, the keyhole was behind thick protective glass, so he began to break the glass while Jo showed up to steal the cross. A fight broke out, and at first, it seemed like Jo had the upper hand, but Sully turned the tables and threw Jo against the glass, finally breaking it. After putting the cross on the keyhole, Sully opened the secret door, but only Nate emerged. Nate noticed Chloe had passed out underwater, so he went back for her. Once they were both out, Chloe was shocked to see that she had been helped instead of backstabbed. This door led them to a Roman antechamber, where Chloe lit up a torch when Nate's lighter failed again. The chamber was underground, and Sully could see them through a drainage grill on the street. He found a symbol carved on a rock that indicated that both keys must go together to open the next door. Sully threw the key he had through the grill so it could reach the duo. Nate put the crosses together and managed to open another mysterious door that took them to a Roman storehouse. There were 3 giant urns in it, and for a moment, the team thought they had found the gold. However, the urns were full of salt. As they inspected them, the urns suddenly broke, which allowed them to find a map among the salt. Nate took note of a route that went from Spain to the East Indies, but before he could discuss the possibilities, Chloe took out her gun and demanded that he hand the map over to her. Nate tried to make a deal with her, but Chloe just told him that he didn't know the full story of what happened to Sam before knocking him out and running away with the map. Moments later, Sully woke Nate up, and Nate demanded to know the truth. Sully explained that Sam didn't ghost him, he was just gone. They had reached the captain's tomb together and found the journal, but on their way out, they were attacked by Jo and her men, and Sam got shot. Nate realized that Sully got away and left Sam there to die, and the only reason why he recruited Nate was that Sam could have told him some of the missing clues he was missing to reach the gold. After calling Sully greedy and selfish, Nate broke their partnership and left. Later, Sully found Nate to try to make him come back, and Nate accepted, but only because he had been looking at the postcards and decided he wanted to finish what his brother started. Meanwhile, Jo went to report to Santiago about what had happened, only to discover that Chloe was working for him too. Since she had been more successful, from now on, she would lead the operation, which made Jo rather angry. Santiago and his team got things ready at his private airport, including his beloved red car, which Nate and Sully took advantage of to sneak inside by hiding in the trunk. After looking at the map and deciding their trajectory, Santiago offered a speech about how his family had been betrayed, and how he would restore their honor. But Jo interrupted him by killing him. Chloe got scared and tried to escape, so while Jo and her men went after her, Nate and Sully took the chance to sneak around and recover the map. The plan was to steal some parachutes and jump off the plane, but when they made it to the cargo hold, Nate confronted Jo to ask her if she really killed Sam. While Sully jumped away with the parachute as Nate found himself in a fight with the men while the cargo was pushed off the plane, taking them to the beginning of the story. Jo's men found Chloe and engaged her in a gunfight, which made it difficult for her to escape by parachute as well. Instead, she decided to get inside the car and drive it off the plane, and when Nate climbed back inside, it was Chloe that pushed him out again. But she was also the one to grab his hand and guide him to one of the falling cargo boxes, dropping on top of it and opening its parachute, which allowed them to safely land in the middle of the sea. The duo drifted around for a while until eventually, the waves took them to the Philippines, where they checked into a hotel using Sully's credit card. Chloe printed a map that followed the same dimensions as the real one, and using Sam's postcards, Nate realized the map didn't pinpoint the exact spot to find the treasure. Sully was right, Sam did try to leave Nate the last clue, so Nate and Chloe spent the night trying to decipher his messages. Chloe got tired after a while and went to bed, but Nate refused to give up, and this turned out to go in his favor because he realized he hadn't used the oldest trick in Sam's book. Since the lighter still wouldn't work, Nate used a candle to reveal a secret message on a postcard telling him to use the crosses as a compass. Nate did exactly that and finally discovered the location of the gold, writing the coordinates on a piece of paper before going to bed too. The next morning, Jo and her men arrived at the area while Chloe woke up first and found the paper with the coordinates. She decided to take the note with her and leave Nate behind, but when Nate woke up alone, he wasn't worried because she left the wrong coordinates on purpose, already guessing Chloe would betray him. Nate took a motorboat to the cave indicated by the coordinates, unaware that Jo saw him from afar while looking around the wrong place. Inside the cave, Nate took a swing to go through an underwater tunnel and came out inside another cave where both of Magellan's ships had been hidden all these years. As Nate found the gold inside, Sully showed up in the cave as well thanks to the tracker he still had on his phone. He told Nate that Sam would be proud of him, but before they could discuss things any further, Jo and her men showed up, so the duo hid inside a secret compartment. With the help of 2 helicopters, Jo's crew airlifted the entire ship through a hole on top of the cave. So Nate and Sully came out of their hiding spot to grab as much gold as possible together with a dagger and a sword to defend themselves. Then, they went upstairs and fought the crew until they threw every man off the ship. Now Sully could climb up the chains that were holding the ship and reach the helicopter, where he pushed off the men he found and took over the controls to fly away from Jo, who was on the other ship. Jo ordered her pilot to follow Sully, causing her ship to hit the other. Her men jumped into Nate's ship and began a fight, thus Nate beat them up and got to steal some guns from them. He also found some gunpowder lying around. Sully guided the helicopter through a narrow passage between cliffs to lose the chasers, but Jo was waiting for him at the other end, so he had to pull a very risky maneuver to avoid crashing into them. This was only a temporary dodge as Jo and her ship were still pursuing them, prompting Nate to take extreme measures. Nate found gunpowder and put a ball inside the ship's cannon. After a few failed tries, he managed to make Sam's lighter work and fired the cannon at the other helicopter. Jo jumped off the ship before it crashed into a hill with the helicopter on fire. Nate and Sully thought they had won, but Jo had actually jumped onto their ship and was now releasing the anchor to prevent them from escaping. It was clear that the ship wouldn't hold for long, and Jo and Nate exchanged a few blows before Nate began climbing the chains to reach the helicopter. Seeing Jo coming after Nate, Sully decided to finally change his ways and sacrificed his bag of gold by throwing it at Jo, causing her to fall into the ocean. Sully then helped Nate into the helicopter just before the chains finally broke and the ship fell on top of Jo, killing her. The ship floated for a few seconds before it began sinking, and Nate figured they could dive for treasure later. However, this wouldn't be possible as the Philippine naval units were approaching, so the treasure would end up in the hands of their government. As the duo flew away, Sully laughed when he saw Chloe trying to follow them on a motorboat but also lamented the lack of treasure. However, Nate surprised him by showing him the gold he had managed to hide in his pants. Meanwhile, in a prison in the middle of nowhere, Sam wrote Nate another postcard, warning him to watch his back. Months later, Nate met with an agent working for a man named Roman, who was interested in his ring and wanted to exchange it for a Nazi map. The agent tried to betray Nate by taking both the ring and the map, but Sully showed up and created a distraction so Nate could recover both items. As the duo left together, they were caught by an unseen person.